Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the Menopause in the Workplace digital event hosted by the CMI East Midlands and Eastern Regional Board. My name's Catherine and I'm the Deputy Chair and also the Diversity and Inclusion Lead. If you have any questions during the session, you can ask them using the live chat box on the right of your screen, and we'll try and answer as many of them as we can at the Q&A part later in the session. Today's session is being recorded and will be shared with you later on today for those of you who booked to attend. The event recording will also be available on the CMI website and the CMI YouTube channel. So we're really delighted today to be joined this afternoon by Deborah Garlick, Director of Henpicked Menopause in the Workplace. Deborah's going to be covering the topic this afternoon of menopause in the workplace, and she's going to help us understand what we can do to make our workplaces menopause friendly and how we can do it. We'll also be looking at some of the latest developments and news, plus why employers need to take menopause in the workplace seriously, the benefits of being a menopause friendly workplace, how menopause can affect someone at work, and what employers can do to become menopause friendly, and also what we can do at an individual level. So without any further ado, I'd like to welcome Deborah and hand over to you to begin.
Thank you very much, Catherine, and thank you very much for joining us today. As Catherine says, we've got a lot of information to share today, and what I'm going to focus on in the next hour is why we're talking about menopause now, how menopause can affect us at work, or how it could affect anybody at work, and what can you do both at an organizational level, at a line manager level, and also from an individual level to become a menopause friendly employer. And I'm going to be using a checklist which we've used for a long time now, which will give you a step-by-step guide. So this will be available to you. Actually, it's probably already available in chat, but I'll take you through that so you'll be able to take lots of actions, lots of ideas, lots of thoughts around what you can do at work. And you know, whether you're starting from scratch or you've already begun, focusing on those key areas. No organization is the same. There is no one size fits all. However, there are 6 key areas of focus. So I'll make sure that we cover off those and give you plenty of ideas of what you can do. So just going to move on now. Just as a little reminder, that particular checklist, for those of you who are accredited or going for accredited under menopause friendly accreditation, the 2 standards do work together. So you can use those whether you're already going for accreditation or you're not. So just a little thing around why are we talking about menopause now? You may already be, this might already be on your radar, but actually we are in a very, very different time, and I'll come on to that very shortly. But there has never been a better time to talk about menopause than there is now. It's constantly in the media. Henpicked was in the media yesterday in the Daily Mail. You see celebrities talking about their menopause, and in fact it's gone from a whisper 5 years ago to, some of you may already see the billboards that are up in various shopping areas talking about menopause. So it is absolutely trending. It's a key theme that's going on. There's also a government inquiry underway. Now, the government inquiry finishes this week, actually finishes for submissions. However, what that inquiry is going to focus on is whether current employment law supports menopausal women in the workplace enough. So I'll come on to that a little bit later when I cover off a few tips on employment law. So never a better time to talk about it. And the other thing I would say, and this is probably, fingers crossed, already in your diary, but the 18th of October is World Menopause Day. And I think whilst we're seeing so much activity in the press, we are going to see the most exciting World Menopause Day ever. But over to you, first of all. Can you tell us if you've already begun this journey? Have you already started to get the conversation going in your organisation? So just a simple, we'll launch a poll very shortly, just a simple yes, no, maybe it's on the radar. So over to you. Do press your buzzers on that one. Be interesting to see what we're looking at here. Back in 2018, the CIPD did some research that said that 1 in 10 employers had already started their menopause journey within the workplace. Sometime later, and other surveys that have been run, some have said as many as 50% have already started their campaign. So the figures are starting to come on now. It's around about 50%, are we saying, are already? Pretty good numbers there. Thank you very much, Mel. So around about half, or 44% of you have already started your campaigns. That's moving now. It's a little bit like Eurovision, isn't it? But yes, we've got 32%, 40%. Shall we stop it there now, Mel? And understand what people have already done in their organisation. So somewhere between 30-40% of you have already got your campaigns underway. Some of you haven't, but good to see a fair number have got this on their radar. So what have you done? Some options here: creating a menopause policy, getting a guidance document in place, getting the conversations going in your organisation, or already training up your colleagues, maybe reflecting on what your workwear is or what facilities you have in place. So thank you very much for filling in those polls. Shall we see where we are there and end it there, Mel? Thank you. So we know that around about 35% of you have created your document. We'll come on to those very shortly. And some of you have got the conversations going and put some training in place. We'll step through that very, very, very shortly and continue to understand what you can do in each of those areas. So thanks for filling that in. I'd now like to focus the next segment on why. Why are we talking about menopause now? And for that matter, what would be the business case around it? So for those of you that might need to put forward a business case, perhaps talk to your finance director, pitch for the budget or whatever, these next few slides will enable you to put some meat on those and actually be able to understand what the compelling reasons are for your particular organisation. And again, we've got a fact sheet that's coming out to you, or an article that we've just brought completely up to date with Professor Joe Brewis, so that you can use that after the session today. But 4 key reasons why it's important that we talk about menopause now. The first one is the demographic case. Now, this is a really compelling reason because, of course, menopause has always been around. As long as there have been women on this earth and as long as there's been, they've lived long enough, there's been menopause. However, what is very different is how much longer we're living for. So if we go back in time around about 100 years, we tended to experience menopause. It depends which statistics you look at, but I'm going to go with, we tended to experience menopause at 57 and died at 59. So you can really understand why people think that menopause is an end of life experience or towards the end of someone's life. Average figures, of course, I'm sure there are a lot of people around in those days that were a lot older than that. However, today what is different is we tend to experience menopause at 51, and that's a one day in time event. We can live to be, on average, 83. We stand a 1 in 6, 1 in 7 chance of living to be 100. And we're working until our late 60s. So when you start to look at that, it's a very different experience. It's towards the middle of our lives, not towards the end of our lives. And of course, we could be working decades after our menopause. So it's really important that we talk about it. It's an important stage of our careers for very many women around that time. And of course, menopausal women are the fastest growing workforce demographic in the UK. Around 8 in 10 of us are in work right now. So a compelling demographic case. And I'll move on to the business case because, again, financially, this is very, very compelling. And there are lots of boxes that this ticks, from supporting an inclusive culture, retention and attraction, reducing time off, improving performance. But actually, some of them have got more research behind them than others. So say, for example, if I look at reducing time off or increasing performance, there's still a lot of research that's required in those areas. And actually, from our experience of working with so many organisations and their colleagues, we also know that so many of us work even harder during our menopause, stoically go on without an interruption or without taking any time off at all. So more research in those areas. But a couple of those areas I will focus on in particular. And one is retention and the other one is attraction, because they do make a big difference in an organisation. And I'll focus on retention first, because we have some solid evidence to suggest that menopause campaigns make a huge difference in this area. And we do know that 1 in 4 women consider leaving work during their menopause. Now, that is a massive number. If you look in your organisation and look at your own demographics, do the calculation yourself. How many people could be affected by menopause right now? And if 1 in 4 of those considering leaving or actually left, what sort of financial impact will that have in your organisation? Particularly when we know that Oxford Economics say it costs around about £30,000 each year or each time you have to recruit somebody or fill a hole in your organisation because somebody's left. So it doesn't take long for that cost to the business to really start to ratchet up. So there's a lot that you can do in that area. And I'm going to focus on attraction because this is something that is very, very new. This is something that is a UK first and possibly global first, because we've started to see employers now putting that they are a menopause-friendly employer in their job adverts. Now, where I'm sitting today in the middle of Nottingham and I'm surrounded by NHS hospitals, if I was looking for a job in an NHS organisation and one said they were a menopause-friendly employer as a menopause-friendly woman, then my feet would do the voting on that one. So we're going to see more and more of this. It's not just NHS trusts that have started doing this now. It's actually private organisations, big public sector organisations and private organisations. So it's really worth thinking about. And to be fair, I've not met a HR person yet that says it's a doddle to fill a vacancy, to find the right talent when somebody leaves. So it's always going to be better value for money to retain and attract in that sort of way. So that's the business case. The other one bullet point that was on there was reduces risk. And a question that was pre-submitted is menopause covered by employment law? Now, we know the government inquiry is looking into this to say, does it cover menopause enough? And I think all of us are saying probably menopause will probably be the 10th protected characteristic under the Equality Act. So I'll focus on that employment law today. Because menopause is covered by employment law, predominantly the Equality Act, also the Health and Safety at Work Act 1974. And it can be covered under age, sex and even disability discrimination. Now, you might say menopause isn't a disability, and I would agree with you. But the symptoms can be so severe and over such a period of time that they can be classified as a disability under the Equality Act. So it's imperative that you do look at employment law, you do make sure that your line managers are trained, that you've got the right documents in place, that you're supporting people in the right way. To be fair, we're seeing a significant increase in the number of tribunals that are coming through. We're not expecting that's going to be any different in the future, and in fact we're expecting that to escalate. So it's really worth you taking this into account. And frankly, the only way you can win at a tribunal is not find yourself there in the first place. It's very costly, both in time and resources, and because there haven't been that many published tribunals for menopause, then from an employment brand type point of view, you might see yourself trending on Google, and nobody wants that. So do bear in mind that is in the background, and it's imperative that you do cover or you make sure people are trained so that you don't find yourself in a tribunal. So that was the third reason. The fourth reason is the social responsibility case. This is my favourite, to be fair. And having worked with so many organisations, I would say that the vast majority do not do this because of the business case, however compelling that is. They do it because it's the right thing to do. They do it for equality, diversity, inclusion, well-being, because they are a great place to work. And these are the sort of comments that we see every day. This can literally be life-changing for colleagues, and it can certainly, they'll thank you for it. So that is the fourth reason. And I know I whipped through those pretty quickly, but as I say, we have got an up-to-date article that we can share with you, so you've got all of that information at hand. So that was the why. Why are we talking about it now? And I kind of took quite a clinical look at that one in terms of what might the business case point of view be. But, you know, the reality is whenever we read people's experiences, whenever we're doing training with organisations and we do colleague sessions, what is even more compelling is the heart side of it. The stories that you hear around how people are struggling on a day-to-day basis. So let's just look at how menopause can affect somebody at work. This is the what part. Now I'm only going to take you through a few things, the ages, stages, symptoms and solutions in this. I could talk to you about it for the next hour and a half, to be honest, but in terms of the key facts that we all need to know. Now, menopause age, I've already said the average age is 51 in the UK. But that's not the whole story, because that is one day in time. And menopause itself, menopause meaning ceasing of periods, is simply one day in time. It's the point when somebody's not had a period for 12 months, the following day is classed as menopause. But actually, the transition, the hormonal transition, starts years before that in what's known as the perimenopause. Peri simply meaning around, so around the time of periods ending. And if you say that's 5 to 7 years, I see different numbers on that one, but you know, that puts the average age of 51. That means on average individuals starting to experience symptoms at around about mid-40s. And then after that one day in time, somebody is post-menopause for the rest of their life. And that's the average statistics. Now, menopause age can be years before that for individuals that may experience menopause either naturally much earlier or as a result of surgery, for example, hysterectomy or oophorectomy or certain illnesses. So it can be much earlier. I know the youngest woman I met was 17 when she experienced menopause, and you know, it can have devastating consequences when it's so young, or it's not when somebody was expecting it. So menopause age, people think it's a lot older than it is. I think we're starting to break through on that one, but that's when it can happen. Menopause symptoms. Now, the statistics say, we use British Menopause Society statistics, that 3 in 4 experience menopause symptoms and 1 in 4 of us can experience serious symptoms. Now, in that 3 and 4, there's a wide range. I know I've seen the 34 symptoms of menopause quoted, the 48 symptoms of menopause, but in reality, it's whatever's different for that individual. We will all have a unique and different experience during this time. But also in that 3 and 4, you'll have those that say, I get a hot flush now and then, but it's no big deal. I know how to manage it. Through to the 1 in 4 who can feel completely polaxed during this time and need a lot of extra support to get through it. So that's worth bearing in mind. And I say everyone's experience is different. What we've experienced when we've run training for colleagues in the workplace is we have a lot of people that come to those sessions thinking, I'll go to this because menopause is probably on the horizon for me. But then when they see the range of symptoms, what they realise is it's not on the horizon at all. They're already in it. And because that perimenopause stage I mentioned earlier, the start of the transition, the most mysterious stage of them all, you may not have any markers. You may already start to be experiencing symptoms. You may not realise the symptoms that you're experiencing is as a result of the hormonal change during menopause. And that was certainly my experience. I was getting symptoms, but thought I was far too young in my mid-40s to be experiencing the menopause. So a little bit of education actually goes a long way in these, that the symptoms aren't always the stereotypical hot flushes. It can be very different. So you've got the physical symptoms and the psychological symptoms. And as you can see on there, there's a lot of statistics from people that say how those symptoms affect them at work. Now, this was some research that we did or that we supported on with the TUC back in 2018. And the reason I'm flagging this is because when we got the results back, we were expecting that hot flushes might come top. The question that was asked was, what symptoms affect you the most at work? And it wasn't hot flushes that come top at all. It was actually the psychological symptoms. So focus and concentration, anxiety and worry, insomnia, we hear that a lot, or crashing fatigue and not being able to do anything about it. And when you look at those symptoms, particularly the psychological symptoms, it's really easy to understand how those symptoms can start to chip away at somebody's confidence, particularly if they don't realise that what they're experiencing is menopause. So do bear that in mind. And I would also say in COVID times, we've seen an additional peak in the psychological symptoms, understandably, because of course there's a lot going on for us during this time, whether it's working from home, whether it's new way of working, whether it's wondering whether you're being furloughed. So we've seen an extra peak there, even during the, if you like, returning back into the workplace. So do bear that in mind, that the symptoms are very, very wide ranging. And again, I'll come back to the everyone's experience is different of this. I'm probably going to throw some balance in here because when we say 3 and 4 experience symptoms, not every individual in the organisation will need reasonable adjustments. I'll just face into that one right now. Excuse me a moment. Some individuals, and I'm going to quote Evelyn Dickey, Menopause Friendly's independent panel member. She said that when they did their campaign in Severn Trent, she felt like there was an organisational sigh of relief that that menopause had been mentioned and that it was okay to talk about it. So do bear that in mind, that for the vast majority may not need reasonable adjustments. For the rest of the individuals, it may be small things that can make a world of difference, and they may be only over a short period of time. So it's not costly to support menopause in the workplace. It's absolutely essential, but it's not costly. And it's also important when you're doing education to help people understand, and this is one of the things that we found particularly key during colleague sessions, and that is symptoms can be managed. For the vast majority, symptoms can be managed. There's a bit of a knowledge gap going on here, because we experience, or we talk to a lot of individuals in the training who think menopause is just something you've got to just get on with, just got to plow through. That's not the case. That extra education helps people. It empowers people to understand what they can do to be at their best while they're at work. So that's a little bit about menopause. And I'm now going to move on to going back to this document here, the 6 focus areas, what you can do in your organisation to be menopause friendly, whether that's from an organisational point of view, if you're a line manager, or from an individual point of view. We can all play our part in this. So first of all, let's just take a look at menopause policies. Now, they're not law yet. I think there's a lot of us that think that menopause policies will become law very soon. However, if we look at this guidance document, the first one is it clear how your organisation supports menopause at work? Now, in being clear, it's always good to have your approach, the resources that your organisation will signpost to, the support in your organisation documented. I always say, think about the colleague in your organisation who might be struggling with symptoms, might not know what they want to do about it or what they can do about it, how your organisation supports. If they can go to the intranet and type in menopause or wherever you store your documents, and a document comes up that quite clearly shows this is how our organisation treats menopause, then that individual will feel far more confident in opening up the conversation and talking to their line manager. Or for that perspective, if a line manager gets a meeting in their diary that says, I'd like to talk to you about my menopause, if it's documented and they can find it, then they're going to feel much better prepared to have a supportive conversation with that colleague. So policies, guidance, or fact sheets, whatever you decide to call them, having them documented, easily accessible, and we always say communicated on a regular basis. So usually 3 times a year is good, until we get to the stage where menopause is understood in your organisation. What you call them, I mentioned earlier, it doesn't really matter. We do have some organisations that have policies, some that have guidance documents, some that have fact sheets. The reality is they generally cover the same sort of key information. Those particular examples that I'm showing there have come from Menopause Friendly's library. It's great to see the range of policies that are available now, or guidance documents, because rather than starting from scratch, it's always good to take inspiration from what somebody else has already done. So that is your number 1. Have you got a policy guidance document? Is it making it clear that your organisation supports menopause? And the second one is creating a culture where menopause can be talked about openly. Easier said than done for some people. This is a sensitive subject. I still keep seeing the word taboo, and I probably still will see that for some time yet. But menopause is a stage in life like any other. It has been taboo. It's had a bad rap. It's important that we change mindsets around menopause, and opening up the conversation is key to that. And I did say that it's easier said than done for some. In being a sensitive subject, I know some of the one piece of feedback I had from a line manager yesterday who said, what if I offend someone? When I'm opening up the conversation, what if I offend someone? Or sometimes we'll have colleagues saying, this is really a personal matter, or how do I raise that? They might not know anything about menopause, or what if I don't know enough? So people feeling like they're lacking in confidence. So getting the conversations going, getting the knowledge out there, enabling people to talk about it with confidence, is absolutely key to embedding menopause friendly in your organisation. And several top tips: whichever communication channels you have, tap into those, talk to your comms team if you have one, get the menopause word out there. And the top tip there is, if you've got a senior leader engaged in menopause in your organisation, or if you are a senior manager, getting a poster like this that says that you're committed to being a menopause friendly employer makes a great snapshot, and it also gives everybody else permission to talk about menopause. So do that. So lots of shared stories as well, and the perfect time to talk about menopause is the 18th of October, which is World Menopause Day. So perfect timing if you want to get that conversation started this year. And moving on, providing the right training and support. Now, we're often asked, can you come in and do a colleague session in our organisation? Excuse me a moment. And of course, we're always happy to do colleague sessions. However, we urge people to think about the colleague journey in this. Those colleagues will really benefit from the training, both in understanding menopause and understanding what support's available, how they can manage their symptoms, and how to tap in to that support, both in work and out of work. But then if that individual goes and talks to their line manager, and the line manager hasn't had any education, they're going to look like a rabbit in the headlights. So we do recommend a structured approach. So think about HR and occupational health. Think about line manager training. And I know from our personal experience, in an hour or an hour and a half, you can take somebody from not knowing enough about menopause and not feeling confident talking about menopause to actually feeling up for the conversation. So make sure your line managers are trained. Line managers can feel very nervous about this, or if they don't feel prepared. So do make sure you educate them. So do go for a structured approach if you can in your organisation. And I think a couple of things that are trending right now are train the trainer. So very much like people have mental health first aider training, training up champions in their organisation, in people that individuals can go to talk to, or can support line managers if they want to talk about it. And also e-learning. So whatever you do in your organisation, your preferred learning and development approach, do make sure you've got a good plan in place. And as I say, it doesn't have to be a massive amount of information. You'd be surprised actually how much you can actually cram into an hour, and how enabled and inspired people feel at the end of it. So moving on to occupational health, EAP and doctor on call. A lot of people will say we don't really do anything in our organisation, but looking at the checklist, this one's number 4. Do you provide access to occupational health or an EAP provider? And I think this is key to checking in whether they got the right skills and knowledge to support your colleagues, or what they already know. They do need to be trained. And the first time we did training with occupational health, I thought, well, they're going to know all of this. But actually it was something that hadn't been covered in their training, and those occupational health people said it was a light bulb moment, because they often get people referred to them that they don't know what's actually going on. Now they start to think, could this be the perimenopause? So do check to see that they've had some training. And your employee assistance program, if you have one, do check to see. So many of them have got great resources, or also offer things like counselling, or these organisations like PEPI, who do have expert support, menopause experts on hand to help individuals, and have one-to-one consultations. So check to see what you're doing in that area. And here's another one, number 5 on the checklist. Do you have menopause friendly workplace? Do your colleagues have uniforms? And for that matter, even if they don't, do you have a workwear policy that is menopause? sorry there. So when we're looking at menopause friendly workwear, what do we mean by that? Well, many organisations do have uniforms, and if I look at best practice here, when we look at HSBC UK, for example, who are a menopause friendly accredited employer, now what they did is they redesigned their workwear, and they looked for breathable fabrics. They looked for a cut that was more comfortable for an individual, enabled them to move better. Or more comfortably, so it wasn't always digging in at the waist. So they actually did a program and are starting to introduce that into their organisation. Now that's great. It can also be seen as a significant investment for some organisations that, you know, might have to do it over a period of time. But if I look at one of the retailers we're supporting, their colleagues wear a top which is nylon. And when they talked to their supplier about it, they said, well, you know, this is actually making people who experience hot flushes, making them feel worse. So actually they talked to their supplier and they've just simply changed it into a breathable fabric, and that'll roll out over a period of time. Or an NHS hospital yesterday that told me that they've now been able to order lightweight scrubs for nurses in their NHS organisation. So they have great opportunity to have something that is more comfortable if they're experiencing hot flushes. But it's not just about the uniform they're already wearing, it's what is your process. If somebody needs to wash their uniforms more often, can they order an extra kit? So it makes it easier to turn to keep up to date with the washing and always have a uniform clean. Or for that matter, is the policy straightforward to ordering that? Do they have to go through procurement and sort of explain that they're menopausal? So what can you do to support somebody's comfort if they are wearing uniforms? Or can they vary it? Can they take the gilet off? So a lot that can be done around uniforms. But even if they don't wear uniforms in the workplace, then also think about, do you have dress for the day policies in your organisation? I know some do. So worthwhile you giving some consideration to. And also facilities. Go back on that one, facilities. This is more some of the practical solutions here. So can ventilation be adjusted? Can somebody have a desk fan? Can they sit near a window so they can open it if needs be? Is there access to clean drinking, cold drinking water? Some organisations have showers, for example, as well in the workplace. So lots of opportunities to look at your facilities. And I think a lot of people look at it and say, are our facilities a barrier for some people? So again, number 6 on the checklist, that one. So I've kind of rattled through all of the things that are on this checklist. This checklist is a self-checklist. How menopause friendly is your organisation? You can download it, fill it in yourself, and as different as every organisation will be, everybody needs to give consideration to these points. So self-assess when you get this and understand your own areas of focus. And as I say, these do map very nicely onto the standards for menopause friendly accreditation. And what does good look like? Good looks like World Menopause Day on the 18th of October, ideally with us all starting to raise the profile of menopause and get the conversation going. So Mel, could you launch the next poll for us, please? Having listened to that and just a little bit of a recap, we covered off the 4 key reasons why it's important for employers to take menopause in the workplace seriously. And I would add to that, there's some very, very compelling reasons in there, but think about why it will be good for your organisation. There will be some financial benefits. There'll be some the more emotional side, the well-being side, diversity, inclusion, lots of reasons to be doing it. So demographics, business case, employment law, and social responsibility. We looked at the key facts around menopause, and I only touched on it for this amount of time. But when you're running your training sessions as well, it's important to think about ages, stages, symptoms, solutions, and importantly, what support is available both within your organisation and signposting where support is available outside. Honestly, it's empowering when people understand what's going on and what they can do about it. So thank you very much for sharing your thoughts. I can see that the polls are still going. Which areas do you think your organisation needs to focus on? Guidance or policy document, engaging your colleagues, getting that conversation started, training, whether it's for your professional occupational health, HR, line managers or colleagues, review of work where facilities. Maybe you're already thinking, actually, we don't have a uniform in our organisation. We know our facilities are pretty good. So that's very interesting. It's fairly evenly cut, actually. Line manager training is coming out tops. Policies and guidance documents. And as I say, there are so many fantastic inspirational examples in there that you can tap into that will inspire you. I do often see people saying, download this template. From our experience, templates don't necessarily work. All organisations are very, very different. But getting inspiration from what somebody else has done and looking at the key content areas is very important. And engaging colleagues, absolutely. So thank you very much for sharing that. And thank you very much, Mel. I think we have everything we need there. And I think we're going to Catherine now for some Q&A.
Thanks, Deborah. That was great. So we've got a few. We've got some pre-submitted questions from some viewers. So the first one is a question from Sharon, which is certain cancer treatments, including prostate, endometriosis, hysterectomies, and treatment for gender reassignment will bring on menopause symptoms. Is there any inclusive guidance being offered to organisations, as men and women are both impacted, and not just at midlife? But they may need to reveal the status. It could be limiting.
Excellent question. Thank you very much, Catherine. I would start by saying that menopause is a D&I. We're a D&I organisation anyway, but it is a D&I topic. And she's absolutely right. As human beings, from the day we're born to the day we die, our hormones do change. And we're talking about menopause today, but if we think about puberty, we all experienced and survived puberty, and that was a significant hormonal change in our bodies. You've got pregnancy, you've got fertility treatment, you've got gender confirmation, you have, as the question says, those that experience or need, for example, COVID. They're treating men that are experiencing COVID with estrogen. So again, that might result in hormonal shifts in that person. I'm pretty sure it will. So what we're looking at here is hormonal changes. The symptoms can be very, very, very similar. And I know we had a man open up one of our menopause training sessions, and he was experiencing hot flushes as a result of the estrogen treatment he was getting for his cancer treatment. So it's essential that we treat menopause as an inclusive subject. And I know very often, and a lot of those policies, a couple of them actually that were on those slides there, will actually start with we can all be affected by hormonal changes through our lives. It's important that we do give consideration to everybody that could experience symptoms as a result of hormonal fluctuations, and that includes menopause before they go into menopause. So they actually sit it in a context of human beings. We can all be affected by hormones. So that's absolutely key.
Excellent, thank you. Another pre-submitted question from Sue. How can we educate male managers on how to have sensitive conversations with their female staff?
That's an interesting question, isn't it? So there's an assumption there, isn't there? That it's men won't want to come to the training sessions maybe, or might be more difficult for an individual to have a conversation with. But I'd like to start by saying, from our experience, male and female, both line managers, all line managers need to be trained on this regardless of their gender. And I think this is also important because we have a lot of males at our training sessions, and I'm thinking of one in particular where the room was 90% male. When we ran training courses for a whole week, they were very interested in it. So don't make assumptions that male and female have different levels of knowledge. They don't. Line managers are not born with menopause knowledge, all need training. But there's also an extra angle on that one in terms of perhaps how we feel as women when we are talking to a male. And I'm going to use an example here because when I was doing a training, and this was face-to-face pre-COVID at a very large hospital, and we did line manager training in the morning, and we had colleague training in the afternoon. And this individual said, how do I talk to my line manager? He's a male and also very young. But actually, we were able to say, because I knew who she was talking about, I thought it was this individual was very, very, very young as well. But that particular individual was incredibly engaged with it. I had experience of it in terms of the mother had been experiencing menopause. So was very, very interested. And personally, having seen how that individual was in that training, I'd be very confident talking about my menopause with them. So actually what we did say is, you might be surprised. Don't make assumptions. Appreciate your line managers there to help you be at your best and talk about menopause in the same way that you would do any other health condition. So do your prep, and the conversation might be around, I'm experiencing menopause. These are my symptoms. This is what I'm doing about it. This is what would help while I'm at work, and let your line manager or work with your line manager to understand if any changes are required. But male or female, the same for GPs. Do not make the assumption that there is a gender difference in terms of the support and willingness to talk about it.
Excellent. Okay, thank you. Another pre-submitted question from John. Should the menopause be classified as a protected characteristic for ED purposes?
I'm going to say yes. This has been something that we've been hoping for the last 5 years, which is, I wrote the first article about this 5 years ago, and it looks like this is going to become a reality. And I mentioned employment law earlier because menopause is already covered. It's just not that clear how it's covered under discrimination law, but it is covered under age, sex, and even disability. There has been a case about disability discrimination as a result of menopause. So I hope so. I'm fingers crossed menopause will be the 10th protected characteristic. That makes sense. If we go back 30 years ago, we didn't tend to have maternity policies in organisations, yet today we wouldn't expect there to be, not to be. So it's now time, as we've moved through the generations, for us to have menopause policies in the same way, and for it to be protected in the same way that maternity is.
Excellent. Okay, thank you. So we've had a live question come in from a viewer. Could it, menopause, be perceived to be a liability, making one's position in the organisation more vulnerable, especially if it's not a menopause-friendly organisation?
Could you read that for me again? Because I think we said could it?
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, could the menopause be perceived to be a liability, making one's position in the organisation more vulnerable?
One's position. Could it? I would say yes. It could. It could. And actually, I know if I go back 5 years when I went to an organisation and they said, will you stop talking about menopause? It's making us look weak. To be fair, we look for equality. And so I can really understand how somebody might think that. But this is where you start to, and we're very much about balance here. because the vast majority of those that are experiencing menopause will not need a lot of support. For so many, it will just be a relief to be able to talk about it, or to be able to say, if they're having one of those days, excuse me, I'm just having a hot flush. So just being able to talk about it. So I think this is where balance is absolutely key. Menopausal women are an asset to an organisation. Think of those years of experience. I mentioned Oxford Economics earlier and the cost of replacing people. Talent is difficult to replace. And as I said, HR people are always telling me how difficult it is to replace or to recruit the right talent for an organisation. So don't lose your talent from your organisation. Make sure we're keeping that balance. And actually, the benefit of menopause training in an organisation is so many women, Catherine, do not realise what they're experiencing is menopause. They may already be suffering or struggling with symptoms, but they may not know that there's an awful lot they can do about it. So these campaigns are incredibly enabling, and with the right balance, definitely not a liability, definitely resulting in benefits and assets.
Excellent, thank you. So another question from the live audience is, what do you need to do to be menopause accredited?
Well, it's an organisation. It's menopause friendly accredited. Means that you've achieved the standards that the independent panel are looking for. So you apply for it in the same way that you would do any other accreditation. It's menopausefriendly.co.uk. There's information on that website, but the checklist that you're downloading, it's very similar key areas of focus. And that does mean that you've got your policy or your guidance document in place. You've done your training, you've got your colleagues engaged with this, you've checked your facilities and your uniforms and those, and you've collected your evidence to say you've done it. There already are accredited organisations in the UK, HSBC UK being the first actually in the UK, First Direct, Atos, Astor Group. It's amazing to see the difference that it actually does make in those organisations. And I think I would say, and I think I used the quote from HSBC earlier, and Belle said, you know, once they've got the plan in place, she was surprised how quickly it happened. And I know a lot of people will say, and I know Severn Trent and HSBC were saying, well, what if nobody comes to this session? But I used Evelyn's quote earlier when she said it was like an organisational sigh of relief when they started to talk about it. And those organisations, you can say menopause, you can talk about menopause as much as you like. It's just not a taboo subject anymore.
Excellent. Okay. Thanks, Deborah. So just in terms of sort of wrapping up, what we like to do is sort of give our members your 3 top tips or your 3 key takeaways on how you can make your organisation menopause friendly.
Let's look at it from an organisational line manager and colleague point of view, if we may. Because, you know, from an organisational point of view, and I know I said not all organisations are the same, that's true. There will be different cultural influences, there will be different leadership styles, different things already in place. However, from an organisational point of view, and particularly if you're the individual that is responsible or will be sponsoring this or will be leading this in your organisation, do please put it on your priority list. It will make a huge difference to your colleagues, and you've already got, if you like, a roadmap on what you need to do in your organisation. From a line manager and a colleague point of view, I would say start to learn about menopause. I mentioned earlier that for some of us, you know, we often see things saying, let's talk about menopause. We say it a lot. It's easier for some than it is for others. You know, I mentioned earlier that some might think this is a personal thing. We've had people saying, what if I offend somebody by starting that conversation? Those that think it's purely a personal matter and nothing to do with work, or those that just don't know if they know enough and don't want to find themselves opening up a conversation that they can't finish. So the more you learn about it, the easier it is to have that conversation. But then also make sure that people know that you're prepared to talk about it. I wonder how many of you will say at the end of this, went to a menopause session today at lunchtime. Thank you very much, CMI, for putting that on. do make sure people know you're prepared to talk about it. We often say, if you start up a conversation about it, and that's a great conversation starter, isn't it? I went to a training session about menopause, or did you know that it's World Menopause Day on the 18th of October? Don't be surprised who's joined, or you might be surprised who joins in that conversation. And so once it's out there, and believe me, the more you talk about it, the easier it gets. So do talk about it and be prepared to listen and provide support. You know, sometimes it will be just a listening ear is more than enough. But as I say, it's very often small tweaks that make a big difference. So look at that. And from an individual perspective, we all have a part to play in this. Because what we're looking at is cultural change. Now, we've started it in the UK, and I know I saw a question about international. Menopause at Work, the UK are the global leaders in this. We work with a lot of international organisations, and I know tomorrow we're doing a simultaneous English and German training session. So international organisations are starting to come on board now. But we all have a part to play in changing the culture, changing the mindset, ridding ourselves of that taboo. And you know, Catherine, it's one conversation at a time. So everything we all do individually can make a difference to that. So I urge you all, do talk about menopause. Might feel a bit tricky at first, but the more you talk about it, the better it is.
Thanks, Deborah. I mean, obviously we could go on talking about this for another hour or two, but conscious that we've only got you for a few more minutes. So thank you very much. That's it for today's session. Thanks for everybody who's joined us, and thanks, Deborah, for sharing your expertise. It's been really insightful. In the live chat, you can see that CMI have shared a self-assessment checklist by Henpicked Menopause in the Workplace, which will help you to think about what you need to do to become menopause aware and menopause prepared. Please click the link and have a look. If you are a CMI member, you can log into Management Direct using the link in the live chat box. You can find thousands of exclusive practical development resources and much more. And if you've not yet subscribed, why not join our community via the link that's also in the live chat to gain full access. CMI members have access to our Kooth page, which is an online mental wellbeing community. The link's in the live chat again for you to get access. And we've added 2 resource links into the live chat that have been published on Quell, called Managing an Unexpected Menopause and Time to Talk About Perimenopause. So please take a read of those as well. They'll be shared in the follow-up email if you've missed the links. Our next event in the Transformation series will be exploring the topic of transforming relationships, focusing on the well-being aspects of how the COVID-19 pandemic has affected us as individuals as well as teams. That event will be held on the 23rd of September, so please look out for further details in due course. So thanks again, everybody, for joining us, and thank you very much, Deborah. It's been absolutely wonderful to have you, and enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you very much, Catherine, and thank you very much, everyone, for joining us.